I can't wait to see you tonight, honey. Same place as always. My wife texted her lawyer lover, then schemed with a corrupt judge to strip me of everything I had, turning my life into their cruel game. I still remember the moment my world collapsed, the message on my wife's phone that read, "With the precedents we'll cite about psychological abuse and financial control, we can justify taking 70% of the business, the house, the investments, everything." My name is Callum Vasquez. I'm 50 years old, and for the last 13 years I have worked as a security consultant for medium-sized corporations throughout central Mexico. Most people see me as just another guy in chinos and polo shirts, driving a Nissan Sentra to client meetings in Guadalajara, León, and Querétaro. What they don't know is that before settling into the suburban life of Santa Fe, Mexico City, I spent 15 years working for agencies that officially don't exist, in places that are not supposed to be on any map. I met Marissa at a charity gala in Polanco in 2012. She was 30 years old. At the time, she worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative for Pfizer Mexico, dazzling in that natural way that made every man in the room turn their head when she walked by. I was immediately attracted to her intelligence and ambition. We married 2 years later in a beautiful ceremony at the Four Seasons Hotel, surrounded by friends and family who believed we were the perfect couple. For 11 years, I thought we had built something solid together. Our colonial-style house in Santa Fe was worth 18 million pesos. My consulting firm, Vasquez Seguridad Integral, generated about 45 million pesos annually, and we had investment accounts that would ensure a comfortable retirement. Marissa had climbed the corporate ladder at Pfizer, earning 2.8 million pesos annually, managing her territory in the central part of the country. From the outside, we seemed to be the personification of the Mexican dream. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and intense plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, there are new and unpublished stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared on a Tuesday morning in February of 2025. I was in my home office reviewing a security assessment for a manufacturing plant in Aguascalientes when Marissa's phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower, and the message notification kept buzzing. Something about the persistence triggered my old instincts. In my former life, patterns like this usually meant trouble. The message was from someone named D, with a heart emoji. "I cannot wait to see you tonight, beautiful. Same place as always." I felt my stomach drop, but my training kicked in immediately. Never react emotionally, gather intelligence first. For the next 2 weeks, I conducted what I privately called Operation Clarity. I used skills I hoped to never need again on Mexican soil. I followed Marissa on her supposed client dinners and discovered she was meeting with Dorian Santa Maria, a powerful divorce lawyer with offices in Torre Ejecutiva San Angel. Santa Maria, 47 years old, married with 2 teenage children, had a reputation for handling complicated divorces for the country's wealthy elite. The irony was not lost on me. My unfaithful wife was having an affair with a divorce lawyer, but what I discovered next made adultery seem like a minor transgression. During one of their meetings at the bar of the St. Regis Hotel, I managed to get close enough to overhear their conversation. They were not just planning to end our marriage, they were orchestrating my complete financial destruction. "Ricardo confirmed he will handle the case," Santa Maria said, swirling his whiskey. "With the precedents we will cite about psychological abuse and financial control, we can justify awarding her 70% of everything. The business, the house, the investments, everything." Marissa leaned closer to him. "And the restraining orders are filed the moment we submit the lawsuit. We will claim that you fear for your safety due to his military background and secretive behavior. Look, by the time he realizes what is happening, he will be locked out of his own company and prohibited from coming within 500 meters of his own house." The Ricardo they mentioned was Judge Ricardo Montalvo, a 58-year-old family court judge in the Superior Court of Justice of Mexico City, who had been appointed to the position 13 years earlier. I had heard rumors about Montalvo in certain circles, rumors about favorable rulings for lawyers who contributed to his wife's various charitable foundations. As I sat in that hotel bar, listening to my wife and her lover plan my destruction with the help of a corrupt judge, I felt something I had not experienced since my operational days: the cold, calculating calm that comes before launching a mission. They thought they were dealing with a suburban security consultant who would give up and accept whatever scraps they threw at him. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. That night I sat in my study looking at the city lights beyond our window, processing what I had learned. In my former life, when faced with a complex enemy network, the first rule was simple: know your targets better than they know themselves. So I began to build psychological profiles of the three conspirators. Dorian Santamaria had graduated from the UNAM Faculty of Law in 2002 in the middle of his class. Nothing spectacular. With 23 years of experience, he had built his reputation on one thing: being ruthless in divorce proceedings. His firm, Santamaria and Associates, occupied the entire 23rd floor of Torre Ejecutiva San Angel, and his Porsche 911 Turbo, parked in the executive garage, valued at 4.2 million pesos, suggested he charged accordingly. Public records showed that he himself had divorced in 2019, paying his ex-wife 18 million pesos in the settlement. Apparently, he had learned from that experience. Judge Ricardo Montalvo was more interesting. Appointed by the head of government in 2012, Montalvo had presided over hundreds of divorce cases. What caught my attention was the pattern in his rulings. Lawyers who donated to the Montalvo Family Foundation, his wife's charity, seemed to win favorable decisions at a statistically impossible rate. The foundation's tax returns were public record, and the list of donors read like a who's who of family law attorneys in Mexico City. As for Marissa, I realized I had been blind to signs that were obvious in retrospect. The new exercise routine she started 6 months ago, the sudden interest in expensive Victoria's Secret lingerie, the way she tilted her phone when she texted, classic operational security failures I had overlooked because I had let my guard down at home. But they had made a critical mistake in their planning. They assumed I was just another wealthy husband who would give up when hit with legal papers. They had no idea that I still maintained contact with my former colleagues. I made 3 phone calls that week. The first was to Danny Rodriguez, now running a private investigation firm in Monterrey after 20 years with intelligence agencies. The second was to Sarah Mendoza, a forensic accountant who had helped the Attorney General's office unravel white-collar crimes before going independent. The third was to someone I will call Thompson, a cybersecurity expert, whose real name and background I cannot share, but whose skills in digital surveillance were unmatched. I need a complete analysis of 3 targets, I told Danny during our meeting at a Starbucks in Roma Norte. Financial records, communication patterns, travel schedules, personal habits, everything. Danny studied me across the table. How deep are we going, Callum? Deep enough to find the truth, but we stay completely legal. No break-ins, no illegal surveillance, no hacking. Everything we collect has to be admissible in court or accessible through public records and legitimate investigative techniques. In 10 days, my team had assembled a complete picture of the conspiracy. Sarah's financial analysis revealed that Santamaria had been borrowing heavily against his firm's accounts, likely to finance his expensive lifestyle. His Porsche payment was 3 months late, and he owed 3.6 million pesos in back taxes to the SAT. The man who projected success was actually drowning in debt. Thompson's work was more delicate. He identified that Santamaria and Marissa were using a messaging app called Signal for their communications, believing it gave them privacy. What they did not know was that Thompson had identified vulnerabilities in the law firm's IT security that allowed monitoring of communication patterns without directly accessing personal devices. Judge Montalvo turned out to be the most corrupt of the 3. Danny's investigation revealed that in the last 5 years, lawyers who had donated at least 500,000 pesos to the Montalvo Family Foundation won 87% of their cases in his courtroom. The foundation itself was a front operation. It claimed to support educational initiatives for disadvantaged children, but its tax returns showed that 78% of donations went to administrative costs, which included Montalvo's wife's annual salary of 3 million pesos as executive director. More damaging was Montalvo's gambling problem. Danny discovered that the judge had been making regular trips to the Casino Life Polanco, often losing 300,000 to 400,000 pesos per weekend. The man was desperate for money, which explained why he was willing to sell favorable rulings. But the most valuable intelligence came from an unexpected source. Thompson had been monitoring the digital patterns around the 3 targets when he noticed something interesting. Santa Maria's law firm used a cloud-based case management system that automatically backed up client communications to an external server. The firm's IT security was ridiculously weak. They were using default passwords and had not updated their firewall in 3 years. "I'm not suggesting we illegally access their system," Thompson explained during one of our meetings. "But if someone were to anonymously report to the Mexican Bar Association about security vulnerabilities that could be exposing client confidentiality." I smiled. In my old job, we called this creating opportunities for legitimate oversight. On March 18, 2025, exactly 3 weeks after I discovered the affair, I received the divorce papers. Marissa had them delivered to me by a process server who showed up at my office and made a scene in front of my employees. The papers accused me of domestic violence, financial control, and creating an atmosphere of fear through intimidation tactics learned during military service. The restraining orders were even more creative. They alleged that I had threatened physical violence and exhibited dangerous behavior patterns consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. I was forbidden from approaching my own home and from contacting Marissa directly. Santa Maria had created a narrative that painted me as an unstable veteran who had used my specialized training to psychologically terrorize my wife. As I read the legal documents in my car outside the office, I could not help but admire the thoroughness of their plan. They had effectively neutralized me before I could mount any defense, or so they thought. That afternoon, from my room at the Hampton Inn on Insurgentes Sur, I made one final call to complete my team. The final call was to Marcus Webb, a former federal agent who now worked as a white-collar crime consultant for law enforcement agencies. Marcus and I had worked together on a joint task force in 2005, and he owed me a favor that had been accumulating interest for 20 years. "I need you to investigate something," I told him over coffee at the Sanborns in the Zona Rosa. "There might be some judicial irregularities worth looking into." Marcus studied me carefully. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that involve suspicious patterns in judicial rulings and donations to charitable foundations." I slid him a USB drive containing Sarah's financial analysis of the Montalvo Family Foundation. Everything here was obtained through public records and legitimate investigation. No laws were broken, no privacy was violated. He pocketed the drive without looking at it. "If there is substance to this, I know people who can get it to the right investigators, federal prosecutors, the Judicial Council, all of it. That is all I ask. Justice through the system." While Marcus worked his contacts to get the evidence to the right people, I set the second phase of my plan in motion. I called the ethics hotline of the Mexican Bar Association and reported concerns about security vulnerabilities at Santa Maria and Associates that could compromise client confidentiality. I provided specific technical details that Thompson had identified, including the default passwords and outdated firewall systems. The Bar Association took the security concerns seriously and scheduled an audit of Santa Maria's firm for the following week. What they discovered during that audit was worse than anyone expected. Not only were client communications stored on unsecure servers, but Santa Maria had been commingling client funds with his personal accounts to cover his gambling debts and Porsche payments. The man who planned to steal my assets had been stealing from his own clients for months. The third domino fell when the SAT received an anonymous tip about unreported income connected to the Montalvo Family Foundation. Someone had noticed the statistical impossibility of the success rates of certain lawyers in Montalvo's courtroom and had connected it to the foundation's donation patterns. That someone was me, but the evidence spoke for itself. Meanwhile, Marissa was living in our house, sleeping in our bed, probably with Santa Maria, believing she had successfully eliminated me from the equation. The restraining orders gave her a false sense of security. What she did not know was that Thompson had been monitoring publicly available digital signatures in the neighborhood, cell phone towers, public Wi-Fi networks, and other data that painted a picture of the comings and goings around our street. On April 15, 2025, everything began to unravel for them simultaneously. El Reforma published a front-page story about the federal investigation into judicial corruption in Mexico City. Although they could not name Montalvo specifically due to the ongoing investigation, anyone familiar with the local legal circles knew exactly who they were talking about. The article mentioned suspicious patterns in divorce settlements and possible connections to donations to charitable foundations. That same morning, The Mexican Bar Association suspended Santa Maria's license pending their investigation into misappropriation of client funds. His Porsche was repossessed from the parking garage of Torre Ejecutiva San Angel while he was in a meeting with a client. By noon, Santa Maria and Associates had closed its doors, leaving dozens of clients scrambling to find new representation. But the most satisfying moment came that afternoon. Marissa called me, violating the restraining orders she had helped orchestrate. "Callum, we need to talk," she said in a trembling voice. "I'm not supposed to talk to you, Marissa. Your lawyer got restraining orders, remember? Dorian is in prison. They arrested him this afternoon for embezzlement. And there are agents from the prosecutor's office asking questions about Judge Montalvo. What is going on?" I could hear the panic in her voice. Her carefully constructed plan was falling apart, and she had no idea why. "I'm just a simple security consultant," I said calmly. "I would not know anything about federal investigations or legal ethics violations. Don't play dumb with me. This is too much of a coincidence." "You know what is not a coincidence, Marissa? The fact that you chose to have an affair with a criminal and plan your divorce with a corrupt judge. Those were decisions. These are consequences." The next day, Judge Montalvo recused himself from all pending cases and announced he would be taking a leave of absence to attend to personal matters. The Judicial Council had opened a formal investigation and federal prosecutors were building a case for bribery and corruption. With her lawyer in prison and her judge under federal investigation, Marissa found herself in an impossible position. The restraining orders she had used as a weapon were now useless. No lawyer would take her case given the circumstances, and the compensatory alimony claim Santa Maria had prepared was caught up in the ethics investigation. But it was not over yet. During the prosecutor's investigation into Santa Maria's embezzlement, they discovered something that proved invaluable to my case. Santa Maria, ever the paranoid lawyer, had been secretly recording his conversations with clients, including Marissa, as insurance against potential malpractice lawsuits. Those recordings were now evidence in multiple investigations. In one particularly damning recording, Marissa could be heard discussing how to make sure Callum looks dangerous enough for the judge to give us everything. She had knowingly participated in filing false accusations of domestic violence and post-traumatic stress disorder, potentially committing perjury and procedural fraud. On April 28, 2025, exactly 10 weeks after I discovered the affair, I received a call from Marissa's new lawyer, a public defender who had taken her case because no private firm would touch it. "Mr. Vasquez, my client would like to discuss an amicable settlement," he said. "I'm listening." She is prepared to withdraw all accusations and requests in exchange for a simple, no-fault divorce. A 50-50 split of assets. No alimony, no restraining orders. I let the silence hang for a moment. "Tell your client that ship sailed when she decided to commit perjury and conspiracy with a criminal lawyer and a corrupt judge. I will see her in court, assuming she can find a judge who is not under federal investigation." The beautiful irony was that Marissa had created this situation herself. By choosing nuclear war instead of an honest conversation about our marriage, she had aligned herself with criminals and corruption. Now she was sinking with her ship. 6 weeks later, the dominoes finished falling. Dorian Santa Maria pleaded guilty to embezzling 6.8 million pesos from client accounts and was sentenced to 4 years in the Reclusorio Norte. The Porsche he had used to impress Marissa was sold at auction to pay restitution to his victims. His wife divorced him while he was awaiting sentencing, taking their house in Las Lomas and custody of their children. The man who had specialized in destroying families through divorce had his own destroyed by his greed. Judge Ricardo Montalvo fared even worse. The prosecutor's investigation revealed that he had accepted more than 5 million pesos in bribes disguised through his wife's fake charity over 5 years. Federal prosecutors charged him with bribery, criminal association, and tax evasion. He was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. His wife was charged as an accomplice and received 3 years. The Montalvo Family Foundation was dissolved and its assets were seized to pay fines and restitution. But Marissa's fall was the most complete. The investigation's recordings revealed the full extent of her conspiracy. Not only had she planned the affair and the fraudulent divorce, but she had specifically researched my background to use my military service against me in court. She had even practiced her testimony about feeling threatened by my dangerous skills, preparing to lie under oath to steal everything I had worked for. When the Mexico City Attorney General's office filed charges of perjury and procedural fraud against her, she finally understood the magnitude of her situation. The pharmaceutical industry does not tolerate employees with criminal records, so Pfizer fired her immediately. With Santa Maria in prison and no money for a good defense lawyer, she was assigned the same public defender who had tried to negotiate the settlement. The divorce proceedings that were supposed to destroy me instead became a showcase of her crimes. With Santa Maria's recordings, Thompson's digital evidence, and Sarah's financial analysis, the new judge, a serious woman named Patricia Moreno, saw through Marissa's lies immediately. Mrs. Vasquez, Judge Moreno said during a hearing in late June of 2025, the evidence clearly shows that you conspired with a criminal lawyer and a corrupt judge to defraud your husband through perjured testimony and false accusations. This court will not reward such behavior. In the end, I received 85% of our assets. Marissa was left with some personal belongings and a small settlement that was quickly consumed by her legal debts and the restitution she owed for her role in the conspiracy. The restraining orders that were supposed to keep me away from my own property were lifted when Judge Moreno reviewed the fabricated evidence on which they were based. I moved back into my house in Santa Fe on a Tuesday afternoon in early July of 2025, while Marissa was at another court hearing for her criminal case. But the most satisfying moment came in late July of 2025. I was having lunch at Pugal with a potential client when I saw her. Marissa was working as a hostess at a chain restaurant in Interlomas, having lost her pharmaceutical career and exhausted the little money she had received on legal fees. She looked older, defeated, wearing a uniform instead of the designer clothes she had once favored. She saw me too, and for a moment our eyes met across the restaurant. I could see the recognition, the shame, the understanding that her decisions had led to this moment. I nodded politely and returned to my conversation with my client, a Fortune 500 company that wanted to update its entire security infrastructure. Vasquez Seguridad Integral had not only survived the attempted destruction, it had thrived. The publicity surrounding the case had actually brought me new clients who were impressed by how I had handled the situation. My income had increased by 40% since the divorce was finalized. In August of 2025, I received a letter from Marissa. She had pleaded guilty to charges of perjury and procedural fraud and received 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. In the letter, she apologized and claimed she had been manipulated by Santa Maria and did not understand what she was doing. I threw the letter in the trash without reading it twice. Actions have consequences, and her actions had spoken clearly about who she really was. The irony of the whole situation was not lost on me. Marissa, Santa Maria, and Montalvo had tried to use the legal system as a weapon against me, but their own crimes had turned that weapon against them. They had assumed I was just another suburban husband who would give up when attacked. They never imagined I would fight back with the same methodical precision I had once used in much more dangerous situations abroad. The difference was that this time I did not have to operate in the shadows or bend the rules. The truth and justice were on my side, and the system, when it worked correctly, was powerful enough to destroy those who tried to corrupt it. Today, in September of 2025, I'm still living in Santa Fe. I'm still running my security consulting firm, still helping companies protect themselves from threats they don't see coming. The only difference is that I'm no longer naive about the threats that can come from within your own home. I learned that the skills I hoped to never use on Mexican soil, surveillance, intelligence gathering, strategic planning, were exactly what I needed to protect myself from domestic enemies. Sometimes the most dangerous adversaries are not foreign agents or terrorists. Sometimes they are the people who sleep next to you and promise to love you until death do you part. Marissa taught me that betrayal is not announced with dramatic confrontations. It whispers in hotel bars and hides behind legal papers and fake tears. But the truth has a way of surfacing, and justice has a way of finding those who think they are smart enough to avoid it. The house in Santa Fe feels different now, cleaner somehow. I have updated all the security systems. Naturally, old habits die hard, and I have learned to never completely let my guard down again. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought.